I want to begin by saying it's been about a year now that we've been holding these Zoom meetings, but today we're trying a different Zoom format. An important aspect of the local summit meetings has always been the chance to chat with one another before and after the program, and people have told us that they have missed this. So we're using begin by saying it's been about a year now that we've been holding these Zoom meetings, but today we're trying a different Zoom format. An important aspect of the local summit meetings has always been the chance to chat with one another before and after the program, and people have told us that they have missed this. So we're using begin by saying it's been about a year now that we've been holding these Zoom meetings, but today we're trying a different.
Apologies, that was on my end.
What happened? I heard myself.
Part of the stream, yeah. I do apologize. That was on me.
Okay. Shall I continue? Okay.
All set.
Okay. We're using the meeting format today instead of the webinar format, so attendees can see one another. We also started the meeting, as you noticed, 15 minutes earlier, so attendees can make brief community announcements and chat with one another before the start of the main program. If you'd like to see all the attendees, select Gallery View using the view icon in the upper right-hand corner of your screen if you're using a laptop or a desktop. It's not possible for those joining by smartphone. We ask you to mute yourselves unless you're speaking to enable everyone to hear the person speaking and to cut down on the background noise. At 8 a.m., we will mute everyone for the main program. I'm now going to call on Louise Perry, who has a brief announcement for the group. Louise?
Good morning, everybody. Ooh. And thank you for allowing me a minute to give you the heads up on what is going on with the redrawing of our federal, state, and political district lines after the US Census, which is now the mandate of a newly created New York State redistricting commission, an independent redistricting commission, the IRC. The new maps that the IRC proposes and hopefully will be approved by the state legislature could affect our community's goals and priorities for the next 10 years. And I'm going to pull up real quick. Can everybody, the state Senate district map. Can everybody see it?
Nope, not yet.
Okay, so I have to screen share. Hold on. Sorry. Screen share screen. Okay. There. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. This is our district in blue all the way from Pelham and up to northern Westchester. George knows it well. The League of Women Voters is laser focused on this decennial exercise with the goal to combat gerrymandered districts which benefit politicians rather than citizens. And this is not to dismiss the work of George, Shelley, and Steve. I am working with the Westchester League of Women Voters on this process to help create people-powered fair maps this time around. My pitch today is to get you to think about the priorities of your organizations and groups, priorities that you would like your elected representatives to work on with you. Your input will be key in drawing fair maps. So let me show you the Assembly District map. There we go. It's a smaller scale, but it starts down here in Pelham, goes up to the Westchester County Airport. So why is this important? Why is redistricting important this year? Well, you can see that, you know, our districts are really gerrymandered. So, and how much input did you have the last time around? You would probably draw a map that would be more compact. Well, this year with the independent redistricting commission, part of their mandate is to draw more compact maps and, most importantly, to get public input. So your role as a leader of an organization is to think about your group's priorities and what those groups would like to see our elected officials work on to further their goals. The League of Women Voters of Westchester will be aggregating your input into communities of interest, which will help the IRC as it organizes their public hearings and prior to their map drawing. So please email the list of priorities for your groups to me, and I'll put my email address in the chat. And if you want further information, I'll also put up a link to the League of Women Voters landing page with all the information on redistricting.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Is there anyone else that has an announcement they'd like to make before we start the program? Okay, you can keep your mic.
If I may, Elaine, I would like to share a video that LMC has produced just to highlight some of the services that we offer here at LMC Media.
Terrific. Go ahead.
Let me just pull that up.
In your schools, watching your government, with your neighbors. LMC Media, building community through media.
Thank you, Sean. We can't forget that LMC Media is our co-sponsor of these meetings. Without them, we would not have this Zoom opportunity to reach each other and talk with each other and present to each other. Thank you again. Any other further announcements? Anything anybody wants to share? Then I guess we can begin our program. Let's see, is it 8 o'clock? No, we have 5 minutes. If anybody wants to say something, share something, say hello to anybody. I'll say hello to everybody.
People are welcome to unmute themselves if they just want to say hello to anybody else. We're just experimenting with this for the next 5 minutes. So feel free.
I have an announcement, actually. I just wanted to announce that last night, the Village of Mamaroneck Board of Trustees voted on a resolution to support legislation in the county for right to counsel for indigents and low-income people. It was an important resolution. There's a study going on in the county legislature, and it's been passed in New York City a couple of years ago. Given the anticipated, well, we keep talking about the anticipated typhoon of evictions. I'm not sure when or how that will happen. Hopefully it won't, but it is important legislation to be supported, and the CRC was, and among many other groups, behind that legislation, and we are very happy that the board passed its resolution yesterday. Just an FYI.
Elaine,
Yes.
this is Shelley. How are you?
Hi, Shelley.
It's still tentative, but I think it is that on April 20th, which is a week from Tuesday, Steve and I are going to do an online budget forum open to the public to discuss the budget, what we enacted. So we'll get the flyer to you as soon as it's done and distributed to everyone.
What time will that be?
I believe it's at 7 o'clock. Is Steve on yet? 6:30, excuse me, 6:30.
Good. Next week, a week from now?
A week from Tuesday, April 20th.
Okay.
That's
Thanks.
great. We'll spread the word to our viewership.
Excellent. Oh, no, it's a week from today. Excuse me, you're right.
Okay.
I'm
good.
mixing up my days. I apologize.
The days do merge these
Yes, they
through our. Anything else? Any other announcements people want to make? George, you have any announcements you want to make? Nope. Okay. All right. Where are we? Let's see, 58. We have 2 minutes. Shall we wait 2 minutes or shall we start? We'll wait another 2 minutes, get everybody online. I think it was a difficult time for a lot of people to switch to the earlier time frame since we made a change. A lot of people didn't realize it. Okay, people are coming now, I see. Okay. Welcome, everybody. So is everybody back in school full time? I just have to ask before we even start. Yes.
We'll hear that very soon.
I know. I just wanted to know myself since I don't have kids.
Everybody who wants to come back to school is back in school in Mamaroneck.
Very good.
We still have we have a number of students who are continuing with remote learning, as I imagine in Rhinebeck the same.
Absolutely.
Now, I saw in the paper that some school systems are actually keeping a permanent online option. We'll have to find out if that's going to happen around here also. Anyway, it was an interesting item in the paper yesterday.
Every day is a bit of new news that we're trying to decipher and figure out with the help of George Latimer and Shelley Mayer and Steve Otis. So thank you.
I did notice that a lot of these online options are in very cold climates. Minnesota, North Dakota, Alaska. I thought, I can kind of understand maybe why some parents would do that. Anyway, okay. 1 minute. All right. And your picture is of a flowering cherry tree. Are there any flowering cherry trees yet? No, I don't think so. Mine is not.
No, that's my annual picture taking at Harbor Island.
Okay.
We're always trying to find that perfect shot
Right.
for years. But just reminds us of what's to come.
Right. The baby bird that landed on my windowsill actually hatched two babies, two little chicks. Two little chicks. Good sign of spring. Eight o'clock. I think we can start. How's that? Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay. We are ready for the main program to begin. We will now mute everyone, except for our speakers, of course. We also suggest that everyone except the speakers turn off their video for the presentation itself so that the speakers can stand out. To see the speakers on your screen, choose Speaker View using the view icon in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Once the speakers have finished, we'll open it up to the question and answer period. Attendees may enter their questions during the program in the chat box, or they may raise their hands and be called upon by our LMC media technician during the Q&A time. Now that I've finished all this technical stuff, we can begin our program hearing from our school superintendents. And we're going to start with our first speaker, Dr. Barbara Ferrara.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and thank you. And it is hard to believe a whole year has passed. I recall us doing this last year saying we're just learning and we're moving forward and with hopes that it was going to end soon. And here we are a year later, but we've learned a lot. So it's been actually right now, as I reflect on it, a very good year for us. And thank you for the opportunity to speak about our schools. Let me just begin with some business at the Rhinebeck School District, and then we'll talk a little bit about how things are going with teaching and learning. But right now, when I spoke to you last year, at this time, I told you that we had just broken ground for our capital project. We are building at our middle high school campus. We are adding a middle school gymnasium and a science wing at the high school. I'm happy to say one of the positives that has happened through this pandemic is that the construction was able to continue. And we look forward to opening the middle school gymnasium for student use in September, and the Science Center will follow soon thereafter. It's very exciting on our campus. And you asked about returning to school, and as Dr. Schaap said, everyone who wants to be here is here. Yesterday, in spite of the new news we received on Friday night from New York State, we had planned a phase-in for our schools, and yesterday we phased in our high school. That was our last school to come in. So the kids have done a nice job. The teachers have done a nice job, and we're fingers crossed that we can continue. I think I must say right now that what's really good about all of this and what we've learned over the year is that everyone needs to work together, but they want to work together. And, you know, speaking with the children yesterday in the high school, they want to be back for a variety of reasons. They want to be back in school. Teachers want them back. But in order to make it work, that partnership with families and students and staff really needs to be there. I'm really pleased to say that in Rhinebeck, our staff has worked hard to bring our kids back, and we're looking forward to the last 3 months of school, and hopefully we can continue this way through June. Budget season is on the horizon, and also that's better than it was last year in the sense of we know how to manage the vote for ourselves and our community. So it will be an in-person vote. Obviously, we have the absentee ballots available for any families who need that. Again, I'm proud to say that Rhinebeck, for 10 consecutive years, has stayed under the tax cap, and we are proposing another budget for this year under the tax cap. And we are very sensitive to the needs of our community right now, and also sensitive to the needs of our community, but also very sensitive to the needs of our children and what they will be needing as we transition back in September. So that conversation has just started, as in all the schools. Again, Dr. Schaps mentioned that we are working toward this reopening with the help of our partners. And George Latimer, Shelley Mayer, Steve Otis have been remarkable. And we have weekly conversations with George and the county government, which really helps those superintendents move forward in this process. So it is a partnership, and a really big partnership to make all of this happen. So with that business out of the way right now, I think one of the questions that I've often asked myself, and I'm sure the community is asking itself right now, is how has the pandemic affected teaching and learning? You know, COVID has really changed the way we do business. And as I think of it, and as we've all had this conversation, some of the things we were forced to do to make teaching and learning happen as we jumped into this a year ago might continue. We're going to evaluate what the goodness is from some of the things and keep that. And one of the big things is integrating technology into the lessons. Not that we hadn't done it before, but we've learned to use it in a different way. And I'm excited to hear how the teachers are going to make those recommendations to kind of have a more blended approach to teaching and learning. I think the kids want it, and I know the teachers have seen the value in that. So I look forward to that happening. You know, we started to realign, to adjust to new learning. The first thing we had to do was full remote. And as we moved out of full remote into September and started looking at hybrid learning, that was a challenge, again, for us, and a challenge in classrooms. And what kind of technology did we need? And what did the families need at home? And what kind of rules and protocols did we need to put in place? And we did all of that. And, you know, we're analyzing that and assessing it. What we learned, it requires a lot of flexibility. And we have to say to ourselves, we're willing to change, because we're writing the book. We don't have the book. We're writing it as we go along. So we're going to change and redirect and keep those things that work, and involve our partners, because that's really important to us. We also learned that remote learning is hard on families. We know that. It wasn't easy. It caused a lot of difficulty. It caused a lot of stress. We were partners with the families, and that's why a big deep breath and trying to bring our kids back into school full time. I think it's helped families to relax a little bit, and it's giving kids a little bit of a sense of normalcy, which they really need. And again, I saw it yesterday when I went into the high school. We often think the high school kids can be on their own and they're a little more independent. They still needed to be back with friends. They needed the structure of a day in school. And there was a nice feeling in our high school, which I'm sure is the same also in Mamaroneck. We also understood and learned that communication is the key to a successful end and a successful process. So we keep our website updated. We have the principals have sent out more communications, not only on a weekly basis, but as needed. We learned to use video conferencing, much as we're doing now, to engage families, and that has worked. So those are some of the things which I believe we will be keeping, because it increases the partnership with our families. We also learned that we need to lift spirits, and it was a hard year. So we did a lot with videos. Our partner, LMC Media, was wonderful in getting helping us work with our children. We did some special events on LMC called Value Ed and Rhinebeck Inspires, along with our PTSA, and all those were engaging community in a variety of ways. We started doing things which we knew about, but we started doing more of. For example, a lot more reading with our elementary school families and students, with our principals reading and teachers reading and guest reading, just to bring those faces into the homes. And that was important to us. So the return to full in-person learning, we have the desk barriers. I know there's a lot of conversations right now about, do we need them, not need them? Well, they're in our schools. We plan to use them. Again, when I'm visiting the schools, the kids, I'm always amazed at how quickly kids can adjust to newness. It was like they have been on the desks forever. The kids were doing a great job with them. The teachers were. We're moving along, and we're learning, and we're happy to be with each other. Some of the challenges that our schools are having are things like lunch. You know, how do we do that? How do we maintain the distance there? We're happy it's springtime. We're happy that we're going to have more days of nicer weather because we're using the outdoors. Rhinebeck is pretty fortunate. We have 3 campuses. Each of our elementary schools has 5 acres with beautiful fields. Our middle high school campus is 57 acres. We always think of that as a wonderful luxury here in southern Westchester, so we can spread out the picnic tables and use the outdoors, not only for lunch, but for learning as well. So that's helping us along the way. We are doing random surveillance testing weekly. Rhinebeck became an LSL early in the fall, so we have the capacity to do our own surveillance testing. We picked Mondays for obvious reasons, because if we get a positive case on a Monday, that person's not even allowed in school, whether it's a staff member or a student, and that reduces the number of quarantines that might be necessary because the person obviously had been out of the school building for the weekend. The daily health screener is something that we're all used to now. So that's been in place in September, since we returned in September. And that's an important aspect of at least raising awareness of what parents and students should be cognizant of before they enter our buildings. So that's helped us keep the safety for all of our students, and trying our best to keep safe learning environments. Like in all schools and businesses, if you walk into any of our facilities, you're going to see hand sanitizers, and you're going to see temperature checks and health screeners for all visitors. Obviously, we've limited visitors. Parents haven't been in our buildings, and I think that's what they're missing most right now. So we're hoping that as we come back to the fall, we can have our parents come back into our buildings and see the way we've set things up. Obviously, we've used videos to help them see how the school is operating and what a cafeteria looks like, what a classroom looks like, what the movement looks like, but it's still not the same as walking through your child's classroom. So all of the normal things we've done year after year, like open houses and ceremonies, have all been virtual. So we're hoping that soon we can do them in person again. So my last comment is, how is it all going? I asked myself that. And as I said before, students and staff are happy to be back. I think we needed that. We were getting tired. That phrase, COVID fatigue, I think really is beginning to mean a lot for all of us. Superintendents have worked so hard with each other. We are on the phone with each other several times a week. We have regular meetings scheduled, but we pick up the phone. Weekends, as with all of you, are work times for all of us. And yes, the support of colleagues has really helped us to move along so that we can make things safe for our kids. Yesterday, we received some news about graduation, so we're just unpacking those things and looking forward to making sure we can do some in-person graduations for our kids and moving up ceremonies again, all new, so we need some time to look through them. So what about, we've been asked about, is there learning loss? Are there learning gaps? What can we do? Of course, our eyes are always on all learners, but most importantly on our most vulnerable learners. Our data teams and IST, that's our instructional support teams, have been functioning since September. So we have been watching our kids. We've been assessing our kids. We've been working with families. Our specialists have been reaching out, again, to those learners that have been identified that need that help. The typical progress monitoring is occurring. Teacher assessments are there, and some of our formal assessments in our elementary schools, like iReady assessments and FMP assessments and module assessments, they're all taking place. Regents coursework and AP coursework, teachers follow the curriculum. Teachers give their weekly assessments and periodic assessments. So we're moving along with our coursework. We've been asked about summer and are we going to use the summer to fill in the gaps? Again, we're exploring that right now. What we do know is not one size fits all. I'm sure as families and parents, you do what we do as educators. Summer is supposed to be a time to relax, but yes, summer is a wonderful time to restore and use some of that time for our kids. So our principals are now contemplating different ways to fill in some of the gaps that may have occurred during the school year, whether it's through tutorials, through some extended day, through some summer work. All of that's on the table right now. And we're looking at it both in person, we're looking at it both virtually. So again, nothing decided just yet, but a lot of conversation, knowing that we want to address it. Planning for next year, we're hoping that September will open the doors and maybe this experiment now, this pilot of bringing kids back for these last couple of weeks of school might help us understand what we need to do to make it work for next year. So again, one of the things that we are doing, and some things have gone away. We haven't had our concerts the way we hoped we would this year, and we haven't had those typical events for kids, and we've tried to be creative in how we handle them. But one of the things that I get joy in watching happening on the afternoons and evenings is our high school musical. So our kids wanted it. We typically would have had that happen in February. We are doing a musical. It is going to happen in June, but it's called a movie musical. And it's not what you think of. It's not a movie and it's not a musical on the stage, but it's a combo. And here's how it's going to look. And I look forward to seeing it. The dates are June 4th and 5th. The kids, it's out of sequence. The musical's Oklahoma this year. They picked it because the sets could be outdoors. We're using our campuses as well as the J Estate and the Marshlands to do filming. Every one of the segments, every one of the acts is out of sequence. The kids are lip syncing. The music is being recorded and the kids are lip syncing. Then they're learning a lot of new technical skills and bringing it together and making a movie out of the musical where each segment is going to be done separately. And then hopefully it'll be a project that they not only will have enjoyed making, but will enjoy the product at the end. But more important than the end product is what I observe as I walk through the schools. Last night we had a board meeting, and as I left the meeting, I was in the high school. I saw the high school kids outside, a couple of them on the stage. The kids are spread out, socially distanced, but enjoying the opportunity to be able to work again in very small groups, socially distanced, and trying to do something which gives them joy. So I'm happy that we were able to be creative, and probably creative and flexible are the words that I use a lot in Rhinebeck to describe how everyone's been working this year. So that's a summary of where we are. I'm open to questions and I look forward to hearing what your questions might be, but I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Schatz.
Dr. Schatz? Okay.
Morning. Thank you, Barbara. First of all, I want to just acknowledge it will be our last summit together, Barbara, right?
Yes.
Retiring, but congratulations to you.
Thank
Best
you.
of luck as well.
Thank you very much.
I want to also echo Barbara's just thanks and support from our elected officials. Shelley Mayer has been key in terms of advocating for our resources and needs in Albany, and has been certainly a leader. As well as Assemblyman Steve Otis, and George and his, I would say, team have been just short of fantastic and extraordinary relative to the week-to-week communications, problem solving. I also want to just say the Westchester County Department of Health has been extraordinary. The conversations on a daily basis in the leadership of Dr. Amler, Dr. Hung, and Dr. Levin, it's just been fantastic. They truly are partners, and I think it's a testament to county government as well as our state representatives. So thank you. I want to say that we are thrilled and that all our students, or I would say most of our students, returned to school last week. We timed it with the spring break. We felt that giving teachers 2 days to make wholesale changes to welcome close to, I'd say, 5,200 students back It's a heavy lift, and it's a huge lift, and it's a testament to the dedication of our teachers, their professionalism, the commitment of our administrators who move mountains really to kind of work through every logistical hurdle. And I would also just say great partnership with students and parents. Everybody cooperated together, and that has been our message. We're in this together as one community, and it's gone quite well. Barbara mentioned that the Friday evening pivot around Department of Health issuing new health and safety regulations, reopening, a lot to digest and understand in the next few days, since we had been planning for 6 to 8 weeks about last week's reopening. And so this has really thrown us a curveball. That said, teachers were just thrilled to see kids in schools, and the energy and the joy. I mentioned to the board, standing out, watching a kindergarten, come into school for the first time, leave at the end of the day saying, this is to a mom, this is the best day of my life. And I think that's what we, are hoping for, and that's what we want. I'll start off by, just talking about lessons learned, because our mantra as a team has been change is the new constant. And we knew going into this last spring that there was a sudden sense of shock and in disequilibrium. And we committed to working through the late spring and summer, partnered with Stanford University's D-Lab to kind of come up with what we thought would be the optimal kind of model for learning as we were trying to deal with blended learning models based on remote and hybrid. We prioritized daily routines of school, and we felt it was important to routinize this idea of coming to school, even though it was for half day, and making that shift. And I think the community really supported that decision, and very pleased with how that first leg went, so to speak. Overall, I think our teachers have really kind of adopted this idea of innovation, of practice, that they recognize that this has forced them into a kind of professional learning that is ongoing. It's a sustained model of really saying, how do I adjust? How do I pivot? What skills do I need? How do I learn those skills? How do I present that to create what I would say to navigate a very complicated learning environment? And so we saw a lot of shift in practice, as Barbara has mentioned, and I think that has really paid off dividends as people became comfortable. So I would say requests for use of technology that seemed Herculean at the beginning became what I would say just every day relative to adopting it to the practice. I think we've done a really good job of personalizing learning, and I think that is in some ways the operative words relative to the future, because by being forced to learn in small pods, right, to have a teacher work with a small group of students, we were able to really have teachers get to know those learners, to formally assess them on a day-to-day basis, and to really target instruction to their needs. And I think an example of that, because I know one of the questions talked about learning loss and academic challenges, we, as many districts, really focused on literacy and mathematics. We said we need to actually reduce all the challenges of what are we going to accomplish in the classroom and prioritize literacy and mathematics. And what we found, believe it or not, whereas we were very concerned last spring with finding students, connecting them with technology, that we saw steady growth and progress in the area of literacy, looking at our October reading benchmark levels versus January. And we attributed that really to the personalized experience of teachers and what I would say is the limited focus on literacy and math. We saw higher levels of gains with remote students and students in poverty than we did in students in person and students who we typically really feel that they're on path. So we were happy to see a significant increase in literacy. Those who were either at or above our grade level benchmarks for literacy. We saw significant increases of students of color over the course of the first half of the year in reading proficiency, as well as students in poverty. So for us, we may be an outlier, but I think what we've learned is through this close small environment that teachers can really pinpoint to become very accurate in their instruction, in their pedagogy, and really has paid off for us. I also want to say that it did give opportunity for creativity. Our music program, instrumental music, is a hallmark of the district. And from the get-go, all of our musical instructors from elementary, middle, and high school found creative ways to create the conditions in school to play music. And I had the opportunity to share regionally with our superintendents and introduce Dean and Madden to talk about some of the things that they put in place that I say not only were innovative, but were just brand new relative to allowing students to play indoors and play music as well as outdoors. And so we wanted to have that sense of normalcy around program and the experience, the breadth of experience that I thought was critical. On the other side of it, we knew from last spring that we needed to meet the needs of the whole child. And we established a district crisis team that has met regularly, really since last February, anticipating in February what was to come next. We've been able to partner with local organizations. We've been able to, through the National School Lunch Program, to feed our students 7 days a week, hundreds of students and families, to make sure that there was not challenges around food scarcity. But it was really trying to understand how we get at the social emotional needs of children, how do we anticipate the challenges that families had, and then how do we use that model as something that becomes the norm going forward. So we rely on our social workers, our psychologists, our guidance counselors. And certainly I know that the summit had the opportunity to hear from Dr. Nora Mazzone and about her work, but it really is putting students and families first. And that has been a big part of what we did. I also say that our student sports services teachers became very innovative in delivering services. And Barbara has mentioned, we had to figure out, because these are mandated services, how we would maintain, or we'd say, meeting expectations around a range of services and needs. And we felt and feel that we have stayed the course and that students have made tremendous progress. So as much as we talk about compensatory, kind of issues, we feel in many respects that we've been able to improve our delivery. And that gets back to the lessons learned. I would say pre-COVID, we would have a service provider move from one building to the next. Now, a service provider can log in through Zoom and provide and have students join what I would say is a session together across the system. So the question is, how do we kind of take that experience and say, how do we normalize that going forward as part of what we count on that becomes more efficient, but also allows students across the system to interact. We've had experiences where elementary students have got to know their peers by technology. And so when we think about a lot of what I would say traditional obstacles, technology has really helped us in terms of thinking differently about our approach. And that's something we'll continue to rely on as we go forward. And so we're thrilled that everybody's been back. And I think one of the things that our community appreciates and what we all now know and has been confirmed, that students learn best in person and socially together, right? That joy of learning, that coming together, that physical sense of interaction is critically important. So as we kind of look at the next phase, we understand, how does a school district of 5,600 students do that safely? And it's one of the reasons why we were so interested in bringing students back now. We've learned, as I'm sure Barbara knows, that when we get to do things and test and try them out, we learn each week, each day, about what works and where the challenges are. And so in many respects, where we are anticipating what September may bring, we are using really the last 2.5 months of the school year to kind of explore and understand, how do we navigate in-person learning in a large school district, maintaining health and safety as a priority, and do it well. And so we see this as an opportunity, and we appreciate that opportunity. And our teachers have been just exceptional in how they have gone about their work, and it's a testament to their professionalism. Let me just shift gear a little bit and talk about our budget. One of the things I would say is that we have been challenged historically about how do we live within and work within the cap when we have fiscal pressures around our major categories of expenditures, salaries, employee health benefits, student support services, and special ed. And one of the things we're quite proud about is for the first time with this budget, we've been able to really maintain limited growth because of multi-year contracts with all our employers. We moved to a municipal consortium for our employee health, self-funded health insurance and prescription program. And we've been able to create innovative programs in special ed and maintain costs. So the exciting part of where we are today, at least, is to be able to maintain expenditures with limited growth. Knowing the challenge to our community, to our taxpayers. The current recommended budget that I put forward to the board that's still under consideration calls for a $2.1 million budget to budget increase, or actually a 1.48% budget to budget increase. And the tax levy for that to support that budget is 1.99%, under 2%. It's interesting. We regionally, I believe, with the minimal increase to our budget, as well as being right there, the tax levy, we're probably one of the lowest in the region. Yet, with this convoluted formula, we will need 60% support to pass our budget. We believe that, in making a decision, we're committed to restoring all of our programs through the adopted budget of last May. So maintaining all of our activities, programs, course offerings. And so in order to do that, we felt we needed to move this budget forward, going over the cap. And yet by going over the cap, we still have probably the lowest budget to budget increase and one of the lowest tax levy increases regionally. So you need to make sense of that. I certainly can't do that as well. We're very proud of the fact that this budget assumes that students will be coming back full time in September. We need to account for and adjust for the conditions that may continue. And so how do we think about the impact of COVID going forward? We are adding programs as part of this budget. We're going to add, increase our staffing for music. We're offering AP Music Theory next year at the high school. We're offering a world drumming course at the middle school. We've set aside resources to support our district equity team strategic plan, multi-year plan in the first year initiatives. I want to say that I am very proud of the fact that our school community was able to, throughout this pandemic, maintain a focus on developing a strategic plan for equity, for bringing people in, and building what I would say is a robust multi-year plan to focus on equitable outcomes and programs and professional learning. And so there's much more to talk about that, but the budget supports that as well. We've expanded and enriched our high school elective programs in 11th, 12th grade in this budget. We are planning for, through our capital project, the opening of the MHS Design Lab. We worked on a Pathfinder project, and based on Harvard, MIT, and Brown University's D-Lab program, we've built or planning to build a space that will allow our four-year design program, our computer science, our engineering, our architecture students to have the learning space they need to support the high level of learning. So we're looking forward to this project and hope, as we get into the second half of the school year next year, that this space will be completed. Equally, we are, as part of the capital plan, we're also beyond working on each of our 6 schools and adding a new cafeteria at Chatsworth, a new library at Chatsworth, and a media arts center. At the high school, we're going to also create a new culinary arts classroom that is really going to match our commitment to sustainability, to food science as well, which has grown in interest in our school system. One of the things that I've talked about in this budget is to investigate partnering with a working farm in our region. We're looking to create an outdoor education space where all of our students can go and really focus on authentic learning around sustainability issues, which is a part of this budget. talk about, again, supporting what I would say green initiatives through science and through engineering, and to create an opportunity for kids to learn outside the brick and mortar and connect a lot of things we do to authentic and hands-on experiences. We continue to focus in on evaluating in this budget, we're going to pilot a new math program, Bridges Math at the early grades, which we started 2 years ago before the pandemic. And then finally, our dual language program is going to complete its, I would say, annual expansion. So we will in September, we will have a K-8 dual language Spanish-English program. It's really kind of meeting the vision that we had, I think 9 years ago when we established that program. And so we're very proud of the fact that now we've reached the end of the middle school to expand the program overall. So there's a lot of good things connected to the budget, and it continues with our philosophy and values of breadth of experience, student-centered activities and authentic learning, meeting the social and emotional needs of kids, and the focus on equity. So, that really speaks to where we are from our budget. I know that there was a question about additional funding. Obviously, we were pleased that the federal government came forward with the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan Act. We were also quite pleased, again, to support of Senator Mayer and others to be able to look at those funds as a multi-year resource outside of the budget relative to special funding, knowing that if they were going to put that into what I would say typical state aid, it would actually create the potential for a fiscal cliff as that money leaves the area in the Albany, the funding from the additional dollars. If they were to support that as regular aid, then in the ensuing years, if you develop program or staffing needs, it would be that much more difficult to be able to sustain and maintain that level of funding. So there are a number of categories, including learning loss, technology, infrastructure that are assigned to those funds, and that we'll be able to sit down with our community and say, how do we best use that over time to address our priorities? One of the questions that you asked of us is about expenditures for COVID. I would say, and I know similarly in Rhinebeck, that from last spring throughout this year that we have in some ways expended several $1 million in meeting the challenges of delivering instruction for health and safety issues around COVID. This goes down to everything from how do we creatively deliver materials to students throughout the pandemic who are learning at home. We're very proud of the fact that we believe strongly in putting books in the hands of children. And so throughout this pandemic, we've set up a system where kids receive books. And not only they receive it, they've been able to express the joy of completing and reading those books with their families, their siblings, their parents, and how that's played into this idea of prioritizing reading. But in addition to materials, we obviously for health and safety reasons, and the commitment for tech equity, we've expended millions of dollars to ensure continuity of learning, equity of opportunity to learn, and it's been a big part of our focus beginning last, I would say February through today. So we're very proud of that. From issuing hotspots, Wi-Fi hotspots to families, thousands of Chromebooks, through the generosity of the Mamaroneck Schools Foundation, all of our teachers were provided a tech kit, which allowed them to really navigate both remote learning and in-person learning without any kind of concerns or obstacles. So it's a lot of learning, a lot of applying what we've learned, and a lot of excitement and energy about seeing how that's paid off overall. So that's a quick summary from me. I want to be certainly mindful of the time and opportunities for questions.
Okay. Now, when it comes to the questions, wait a minute. There are some ways we can deal with this. If you have a question, you may enter it in the chat box, or you may raise your hand so you can be called upon by our LMC media technician. If you've joined by laptop or desktop, to raise your hand, click on the reaction icon on the far right at the bottom of your screen and click on raise hand. If you've joined by smartphone or tablet, click on More at the bottom or top of your screen, and you will see both the raise hand and chat options. First question. Any questions? I have a question. I'll start. I know that all around me, houses have been turning over from people who have had no children in the school system for a lot of years to rather large families. I know that even before the closing of the schools to students in-person learning, there were questions about crowding. I'm wondering what the school is anticipating for the needs for space going forward. Dr. Schaps, can you answer that first?
Sure. So I'd have to step back to pre-COVID times. The Board of Education in Mamaroneck organized an enrollment task force several years ago. That was at a time really following consecutive years of, I would say, increasing enrollment. We wanted to involve our stakeholders, our community, in looking at understanding long-term solutions. From that report and work, there were two priorities. One was to partner with an outside organization, do an upgraded demographic kind of analysis, a long-term population study to understand how we could at least look to the near term and understand the enrollment pressures we may face. Second was to kind of really explore through the work of the report and the work of the committee, ways of enriching and enhancing our program delivery models, and that we could think differently about organizing the schools that would in some ways take pressures off enrollment pressures if it continued to go the way of steady increases in students. So last year, even through the pandemic, we worked with Dr. McGibbons, who is a national demographer. He presented to the board a report on near-term or enrollment trends, I think through 2030. He, to your point, mentioned that it was very hard to kind of measure and project I would say, next year or so, because many of our, what I would say, senior citizens, people who are empty nesters, had hunkered down during the COVID pandemic, where typically they would decide to sell their home that would be replaced by school-age children, that there was this kind of pause. Similarly, the other challenge is that there was this exodus from New York City. And so the cycle of that next generation that would move from the city to the suburbs was a mass exodus. And we're not understanding how that may have what I would say a long-term effect on going forward. So I would say that we feel comfortable, as we've reported to the community, that over the next couple of years, we'll be able to support our current, what I would say, neighborhood schools model. We feel that certainly there'll be pressure points relative to a particular school or grade based on that, and we have to pay attention to it. This has been a cyclical problem in our community for over 100 years, the ebb and flow of more students coming in and the limited use of space. I think it gives us time over the next year through the board's leadership to sit down and start looking at enrichment models and ways we can get creative, because we do have to think about efficiencies over time. The model we have in place continues to have what I'll call empty seats based on the number of students in a particular school and grades. And when we look at how we could be more efficient and cost effective to delivery of services, integrate students earlier on, it's something that we need to have a community discussion about together in a very thoughtful way based on some further goals. So right now, I think we're okay. We'll have to wait and see, but we've had steady registration for kindergarten. We've had a lot of new registrants from grade 1 through through high school grades, and it's a wait and see as the spring and summer unfolds.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, Michelle had her hand raised first, so Michelle, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a resident of the Mamaroneck schools, and I have students in the elementary, middle, and high school. This isn't a question, but I just want to commend Dr. Schaps and his team on the blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into this year. I'm sure it's the same in Rhinebeck, and the dedication and love and care from the teachers and administrators has really been phenomenal. I have particularly anxious children, and the warmth that they've been shown has been remarkable. Even an 8th grade teacher called my son the day before full-time learning to share with him about a project that was going to be happening the next day to help relieve his anxiety and make him feel excited about the return to school. And that is really, it's not hard for you to convey in these presentations about the details, but the people in the community should know the care that goes into educating our children. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And I would say, similar to Barbara, this has been a team effort. It's been guided by, our care for children and interest and love of learning. And, we start there. And I think it's expanded to the community because there's been a lot of community support in kind of ensuring that struggling families and children get what they need. So I'm very proud of how our broader community has supported our efforts and our hard work.
All right, next up we have Assemblyman Steve Otis. So Steve, go ahead.
Well, continuing on the same theme, I cannot imagine how hard it is to run a school district during a pandemic. And in Barbara and in Bob, you have two caring individuals who have tried to do, in a sense, the organizational tasks have doubled during the pandemic for any school district. And I've had the pleasure on a regular basis of speaking with both of them during the course of this as things come up. And it is mind-boggling. And so I read the 9-page document from the Department of Health that you got yesterday about the graduation requirements. And my understanding is that there's going to be a standardized test for school superintendents to sort through all the choices for graduation. My heart goes out to you, but I just want to, follow up on the theme that Michelle started with, which is great applause for both of you. These are difficult times for teachers, for parents, for kids, and you've rolled with the changing environment. So thank you so much. And to Barbara, who is retiring, she's going to be a great loss to Mamaroneck. She has had a great career and done a great job, and good luck in your new ventures.
Thank you.
Congratulations to both of you in these hard times.
Thank you.
Next. Anyone else?
I don't see any other hands raised at the moment, and there are no questions in the chat.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, Catherine Parker is raising her hand physically, so Catherine, go
I'll
ahead.
be very fast. I just was going to ask Barbara, what's the debate team at Mamaroneck High School going to do without you?
It's been one of my passions, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, no, truly. And it's such a wonderful thing for the kids. So anyway, I wish you all the best. You've really been so stellar. And, I look forward to seeing what's next. But I do worry about that debate team because
they're going to keep going.
right,
not to worry. Not to worry.
Any more questions?
Next up, we have Nina. If you want to go ahead. Need to unmute yourselves.
Unmute, Nina.
I don't have any children any longer in the school system, but I was just wondering if you could describe the impact that COVID has had on the high school seniors and now the incoming seniors with respect to their applications to colleges, to not taking standardized tests as a measure, as a part of the measure, or what might be a part of the measure for them to attain an acceptance at any particular university. And what has happened in the course of the last year modified how you would help next year's students? And do you anticipate a return to standardized testings as part of the entire application process? I know this is a little out of left field.
And Barbara, I'll let you go first if you'd like, and I'll give you a response.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful question.
Yeah, there's a lot there, but we have thought about our seniors. That has been a group of our students that we were really focused on from last year, knowing that they missed a third of their junior year and then came into senior year. I must say that as the college acceptances came in, I think they're remarkable. Our kids are resilient. They work. Their counselors figured out ways to be with them. So the typical things that happened, although not in person, they happened remotely. We helped through the process, and I'm really very pleased, and as I'm sure the families are, with the results of their college applications. As far as standardized tests, I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm going to tell you my opinion is since we've done away with some of them, they may go by the wayside, or it's an opportunity for us to think about different ways of assessment and thinking what we need to do. So at this point, I think that's one of the things that is going to help us redirect, because we were operating in a very old system. As far as the juniors right now, of course, the focus has shifted to those students. Once the applications were in for this senior class, the counseling department then focused its attention on the junior class and their families to help them through the process. We're working out at Rhinebeck. We're fortunate. We are a small school. Our high school is just about 500 students. It's a very personalized environment for us. We're able to work with the families that way. But yeah, we understand it's a problem, but I think we made it through pretty well. And I think our kids would say the same. Bob?
Yeah, and like Barbara, we're very pleased with our college acceptances and just how success of seniors to get into the school that they would like to attend. So that's really important when we have, I would say, senior class size is well over 400 students. So it's a different scale. I would say we're trying to find in these last few months, just as I would say Ms. Klein, high school principal, and her staff, ways to connect with the senior class to normalize some experience, similarly as it's been a struggle for the last year and a half for their experience, to find some sense of joy and connection to the school. And I think we've been able to accomplish that. I do think we're at a watershed moment. Like Barbara, I do believe that COVID, the emphasis on these traditional assessments for college entry is being seen as being less important or not necessary at all. For us, that's been something that we've looked at for many years, and we really truly believe that the shift to place our students in the best position is to connect them into authentic and I would say deep learning that provides a story or a narrative of who they are and who they want to become. And so for us, it's not so much as what I would say the traditional measures or being the senior class president. It's really saying being an entrepreneur. It's developing new software. It's providing, through our OSR, our OKRA, our civics engagement course, solving a local problem, being able to present that and talk about that. So it's creating those advantages by giving kids opportunity to explore a passion and then share that with a college or university where they see the measure of and the potential of the student going forward. We know that all schools in this area, students share the same interest to attend the most competitive schools. And so that pressure is not going to go away going forward. It's how do we position our students to really be able to kind of in some ways personalize to the university, to the college, who they are, what they're about, what they hope to accomplish, and their resume of what I would say authentic learning experiences that show they're academically prepared, but as a person, they're thinking broadly about the world and how they can contribute. So we go for this idea of focusing on how do we get every child to reach his or her fullest potential, and how do we help them explain who they are to that broader world.
So next up, we have Rena Beater. Rena, go ahead.
Well, I'm breaking the theme now because I was on the theme of thanking everyone, and I wanted to really thank again our elected officials who've been such tremendous partners throughout the entire, not only the budget process, but always accessible to answer our questions. They're always picking up the phone, no matter, even if it's a weekend call. So I really want to thank all of you. You take the time to learn about our districts, about the students and the families that we serve. We're not just data on a page. You speak to our colleagues, your colleagues, about the type of districts and students we serve. I know that, Westchester is viewed a particular way up in Albany, and you really work very hard to let people know what our challenges are. And I really appreciate it as a resident, as a board member. Thank you to all of you.
Ditto on that.
So next up, we have Ann Mcandrews.
Hello there. Dr. Shapps, you mentioned that there was an increase in proficiency amongst our students of color and students in poverty in reading. What have we learned from that, and how can we continue that progress? I've always been concerned about Black student achievement, as it's put, and we have maybe found a way to achieve something more than we ever imagined. Could you please fill us in on?
Well, thanks, Anna. It's interesting. We were very concerned because we had a disparate or a disproportionate number of our students of color and students in poverty that, because of multiple reasons, decided to go full remote. And so, we went through the period from March to June, just trying to orient them into day-to-day learning, trying to find where some of them are, provide them with tech equity around connections and consistency. And so we really, as an administrative team, this past summer said, how do we really, in some ways, really prioritize the learning of our remote students and our most vulnerable students? And I think what we've learned is, number one, create the conditions where students can gain access, right? So that tech equity piece, we had through our instructional technology coaches, Jess Dancy, and Mike Simartano at the secondary level, we had everyday opportunities to kind of figure out what are the challenges to ensure continuity of learning around technology and providing those resources. Second, teachers who were charged with remote learning really were innovative in connecting with kids and following through. So they did get to create strong relationships with children based on the small numbers. Our remote pods for our classrooms are anywhere from 7 or 8 up to a max of 15. So there's really no place to hide when you're in a class every day with 8, but really targeting that instruction. So the lessons learned, as I mentioned earlier, when you focus on literacy mathematics, you can really accelerate and really stay focused on daily progress. And so that we're trying to say is, what does that look like now in a regular school day for kids in person? And so I said, we've said traditionally that class size is the be all end all, and I don't think just making smaller classes makes sense. But how do you use staff in a way that you create small learning pods where they get to know kids and have adequate time and prioritize time with all the other responsibilities in the program delivery that you have to do that? I would say, and the board, Rena knows as well, we have developed over the last, I'd say 5 years, a very sophisticated digital portal where we track and know and have an internal digital dashboard, and we monitor literacy progress. And so we look at accelerated growth, we look at linear growth. We know, from October to January, what we expect a student to accomplish. And we can provide real-time interventions in order to support that work. But it's very sophisticated. And then we look at make connections why a group of students seem to advance and make accelerated progress in reading, and then what we need to do to kind of build that capacity across the system. And the same with mathematics. We really know through formative assessments where our kids are relative basic skills and the just-in-time learning that needs to happen to move that forward. So we have been oriented and organized to kind of close the learning gap for over a decade. We're at a point now where we feel that this is common in terms of our day-to-day practice for all teachers. And so it's just how we're built, and that's why we're pleased. I saw the other day the state released a plan for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they talked about graduation rates. We've had several years over the last 10 years where our Latino students have graduated high school at a higher rate than the state average for white students. And we're very proud of it because it demonstrates for our school system a level of consistency of instruction, a focus on our most vulnerable at-risk learners, and similarly with students in poverty. And so we're going to continue to build on this work, Anne, but it is not surprising for us to be able to at any point tell you how each and every student is doing. And for us, a school of 5,600 students, that is our point of pride relative to personalized learning.
Thank you.
Next up, we have George Latimer.
I'll be very quick, very practical question. Do either of you have any problems with the Board of Elections using any of the school buildings in your district for the June 22nd primary? We know that school buildings are used for us to vote in. At the same time, you've had to go through a lot of hoops to make your buildings workable for school. And there's a lot of them in the Mamaroneck district. I know at least one of them in the Rhine Neck district. Do you have any problems that we need to be working out?
So George, thank you for bringing that up. We do have serious concerns. I will tell you that number one, Chatsworth right now is not available because we've started our construction and capital work and sealed off the public area where we would normally invite in voters. I do think this is a real issue. We just received new regulations that is really ensuring that we limit any kind of foot traffic in our schools to operate our schools, and yet this misalignment of our schools are the center for voting is really a misalignment. And anything you can do to help, I think we'd love to talk to our town and village partners to say, are there other alternative locations where people can vote so that we can maintain a closed learning environment and not have that added challenge as well.
Yeah, George, I think a little bit different from Mamaroneck with the primary. We can support it this year. We're going to conduct our school board elections in the same place, but we only have one site that we use. And that's the site that I have to maintain. I cannot go anywhere else in the district for the same reasons. Buildings are crowded and there's construction going on. So the one site that I have for the primary, we've talked about it. We can maintain it for this year.
Okay. So Bob, give me a call later and Catherine and I will work with the Board of Elections. We don't control them, as you've learned over the years, but we will try to lobby them, and then we'll probably be back in touch with the other munis for alternate locations.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Nina, I'm not sure if your hand left over or is that a new question?
Nina, did you have another question?
You have to unmute yourself.
Unmute, Nina, there.
Okay, sorry. I realized in making my earlier comment about what the Mamaroneck Board of Trustees did in passing its resolution last night, that I was remiss in not giving appropriate credit and kudos to the Okra students from Mamaroneck High School, who did all the groundwork in terms of research, interviews, contacting people, and then drafting the wherefore clause, the resolution and the wherefore clauses. And they did an outstanding job. So please know that, that they are publicly acknowledged and they deserve it. They were great. Very impressive.
Thank you, Nina. And I give all the credit to high school social studies teacher Joe Liberti. He came to me with this idea for a 4-year civics engagement course that really connected students to issues and problems in their community. And the energy, I would say the intellectual rigor and creativity of the students each year, it's just phenomenal. And it speaks to what I talked about around our feeling that this authentic learning, connecting to the knowledge you kind of gain in schools and applying that is the best way for kids to grow and learn, but also to engage as citizens that will hopefully continue as adults wherever they go. And so that program in our mind is, kind of in some ways, it's closely aligned with what we believe for who we are as a school system and how we continue to expand interest in that. So thank you.
The students are formidable. Congrats.
Nice.
And so is our local leadership. I want to thank Dr. Ferraro and Dr. Shaps for their presentations this morning. I want to thank all of you for coming and becoming engaged in this morning's program. And I want to urge you to come again on our next.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Congratulations again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye, everyone.